It began as an Indian trail. The Osage followed it from the hills and prairies of the Ozarks to St. Louis to trade with the white man, known as the Osage Trail. As the West opened up, the military built roads. This is one, known as the Old Wire Road, built in 1859 along with telegraph lines from St. Louis to Fort Smith, Arkansas. The Old Wire Road carried thousands of wagons and families into the Ozarks. It's still in use in a few places. This section is southwest of Stratford. The St. Louis-San Francisco Railroad laid tracks along the same route in 1870, but it wasn't until the 1920s that work began on a paved highway following the old Indian Trail, a highway called Route 66. It was built more by muscles than machines. Men and mules graded and filled. For youngsters growing up back then, watching the first cross-country paved highway being built was a memorable experience.
They were built with mules. They worked 3 mules on a Fresno, and a man would drive the 3 mules and use what they call a Johnson bar, and he'd trip the lever. And I believe at that time they paid 30 cents an hour and worked 10 hours a day for each drive.
It took years to finish. The first sections completed near Springfield in the late 20s. Route 66 ran through and brought prosperity to dozens of Ozark towns. It ran straight through the middle of Springfield, following St. Louis through the square, then west on College. Today, in places, weeds and neglect obscure its important past. It runs almost abandoned and forgotten in many places. Heavily traveled, but under a new name in others. Nowhere in Missouri is a roadway still called Route 66. Instead, it's known by new numbers: 744 east of Springfield, CC through Webster County, 266 west of Springfield, 96 west of Halltown to Carthage. And it's known by street names: Kearney, Washington, Hubble Drive, and in many places where it parallels I-44, it's known only as Outer Road. Old Route 66 is something of a miles-long ghost town. Tomorrow, look at what's left of a time when gas was pumped by hand and motels were called travel courts on Route 66 Revisited. Ed Fulmer, Action News. As you drive down old Route 66, every few miles you pass what's left of an old gas station or cafe. Their rotting remains a reminder that Route 66 was, for almost 4 decades, the main highway through the Ozarks and the nation. Dozens of the tiny 2-pump fuel stops have been left to fall down. Others remain in good shape, but unused. The owner moved away, retired, or passed on. Old 66 still well-traveled, but under a new name. And the days when selling gas was free of OPEC-inspired red tape long past. Some of the old buildings have found new life in new business, and a few continue to be home for the folks whose livelihood depended on Route 66.
In May 1932, I sold white gas for 10 cents and regular for 12. And Ethel for 15.
Dutch's place is out by Halltown on Old 66. During the week, Dutch sold gas from pumps that stood where his granddaughters stand. But on weekends, folks would come by to get gassed in Dutch's liquor store dance hall.
We had a string band here and on Saturday night. And, of course, during the week there wasn't nothing going on.
Another popular stop was the Twin Oaks Inn up by Phillipsburg in Laclede County. Francis Coos still has a working, gravity-fed gas pump.
And that's how they used to do it, by the gallons. 1 gallon, 2 gallons, 3 gallons, 4, 5.
Twin Oaks was a combination gas station, cafe, and liquor store, a popular watering hole in the heyday of the highway. Saturday nights, the place would be packed with neighbors doing the Polish polka. Coos says a man once wanted a bottle so bad one Sunday, he offered to trade a $40,000 house for the Twin Oaks Inn.
And he wanted a bottle of whiskey. It was bad, and that's when he says he just swapped me even. I walk out and he'll walk out, and we'll change. And I says, no.
The old pumps still work, but the gas is not for sale. Francis Coos quit pumping gas a few years after the new highway bypassed his station. Dozens of places like Twin Oaks went out of business when the 4-lane I-44 was built. Only a few are still open. Tomorrow night, a look at a gas station as old as Route 66. Ed Fumer, Action News. Just as the Frisco Railroad brought prosperity to towns along its tracks, Route 66 helped businesses grow. The old cars and trucks that chugged along Route 66 needed gas, oil, and more often than not, a flat fixed or a leaky radiator plugged. Garages like this one in Stratford dotted the highway. McDowell's garage opened in 1924, 4 years before Route 66 went through town. Jack McDowell took over the business from his dad. He says he's never figured up the gallons of gas he's pumped over the years or the number of wrecks he's hauled in with his tow trucks.
When they were building Fort Leonard Wood, and guys would get off work on Friday night and they'd start home and there'd be one accident right after the other. And that old Northview Hill was kind of windy and long and whatnot. And there was a lot of accidents. I've seen some bad accidents in that place. And we'd fill this garage up with wrecked cars.
Is the highway pretty crowded?
Oh, lots of traffic. Lots of traffic. Yeah, they're just, well, if you had to block the road or anything, there'd be cars lined up for 3 miles. Of course, it's that way now, even on the interstate, but it was a lot of traffic for a 2-lane road. There wasn't any question about that.
Like his neighbors along Route 66, McDowell says he lost business when I-44 was built north of Stratford. Some stations closed up or moved over to the new highway. McDowell built up a local trade to replace the tourists. So, where some have prospered, others have failed. Old Route 66 is called Highway 125 in front of McDowell's garage. It looks about the same, but it's different. No longer the important cross-country carrier of people and supplies that once was the essence of Route 66. Ed Fumer, Action News. Travelers don't stop to spend a night at the Abbey Lee Court anymore. It's on old Route 66 down by Niangua, built in the days when motels were called travel courts. The Abbey Lee cabins are now rented out as apartments, one of just a few of the old travel courts still occupied. Years ago, before anyone around here had even heard of Howard Johnson, the weary traveler could call a cabin like this home for the night. For about $5 you could park in a garage and got a bed, a bath, and for entertainment, a lawn chair out front. No TV, no swimming pool to pass the time. You could watch the traffic go by on Route 66 or walk over to the cafe and listen to the jukebox. What these old travel courts may have lacked in conveniences, they made up for in charm. Who could pass up a motel that welcomed travelers with its name? Or at the end of a long day behind the wheel, who wouldn't agree that they had reached Trail's End? Many of these motels, bypassed by the interstate that replaced Route 66, now stay open by renting out rooms for a week or a month at a time. But others, like the Rest Haven in Springfield, are close enough to the motel strip near I-44 to retain good business. Remodeled, expanded, and offering less expensive rooms than the big nationwide chains. Dorothy Mitchell has worked at Rest Haven for more than 20 years.
The little motel right here, but the percentage-wise of the room, I think we stay in business just about as good as they do.
Many folks experienced Route 66 from behind the wheel. Others saw it from their easy chair as they watched a TV show called Route 66. Tomorrow night, more on the show that took you down Route 66 every Friday night. Ed Fumer, Action News. Remember these guys? Beginning in 1959, they starred in a TV show that captured the imagination of a freewheeling public. George Maharis and Martin Milner were Buzz and Todd, on Route 66. It was a TV show that embodied a part of the American dream. Two carefree young men driving down the open road in a hot car. Every week, Todd and Buzz would pull into a town along Route 66 looking for adventure, getting it, and at the end of the show, riding off into the sunset in their sleek Corvette. Route 66 was a hit and inspired countless Corvette sales.
Oh gosh, I was in high school then and about 15, and when those guys showed up on that show with their Corvette, I knew I had to have one. The car was everything, and the Corvette was the ultimate car back then. And when they come along with that show, it just made me want one that much more. I was going to do that someday. College and marriage kind of interfered with my plans, but I finally got one. Actually, a Corvette is a thrill every time you get in one, so even driving to work, I kind of feel like I might be on Route 66.
TV's Route 66 went off the air after about 3 seasons, but it left an indelible impression. An open car on the open road, the quest for America that has at one time or another driven all of us down Route 66.